Well, I think we're probably ready to get started. So hi, everybody in the Field Museum Learning Connection community. Thanks for joining us today. We are really excited for today's scientist chat. My name is Jenny Flowers. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going to be chatting with Heaven Wade. Heaven, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Heaven. I'm a current senior at Denison University, former botany intern at the Field Museum, my high school and college career. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome. We're so happy that you're here. I know you have some fun stuff to share with us about plants. But before we do so, would you mind just sharing a little bit what does it mean when you're an intern? And what is botany? Two quick questions off the bat for you.
Yeah, so botany is basically the realm of plants, and that can go into the flowering plants and the non-flowering plants. And if it's a plant, a botanist deals with it. And at the museum, an intern. Well, I was a summer intern, so I spent my summers at the museum helping package different specimens of different plants. I helped do photography. I help like categorize and put in the database so other scientists all across the world could see the type of plants the Field Museum has.
Wow, that sounds really fun. It sounds like you got to learn a lot and develop some cool skills. Sounds
Yeah,
like a fun way to spend a summer.
yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I know you are excited to talk about this wonderful world of botany, world of plants. And I think yeah, perfect. Got some slides for us.
So I can go ahead and present now. All right, so today we're going to talk about the wonderful life of plants. And so we're just going to be talking about what is a plant, plant structures, how do plants grow, photosynthesis, plant kingdoms, why plants are cool, and a couple of fun facts about some plants.
Sounds awesome.
So the first thing is, what is a plant? So a plant is a living organism on Earth. So there's three living organisms. There are animals, bacteria, and plants. So plants are kind of like us in a way where they need water and nutrients to help itself grow. And just a few examples of plants are trees, flowers, and grass.
Yeah.
And so this is a plant structure. So every plant is different. So not every plant will have the same system as this, but this is just like a general view of what makes up a plant. So the first thing we have is the root system. And so we have the lateral roots. I hope you can see my pointer well.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the lateral roots are like these short stems here, and then the taproot is like the big stem in the middle. And then we have the shoot system, and the shoot system all have leaves. And then depending on what type of plant it is, it can have fruit. So on this one, we have tomatoes, and yes, tomatoes are a fruit. And then we also have flowers.
So Heaven, with this, so you mentioned like the trees, the flowers, and the grass. Do they all basically have a similar structure with the lateral roots and tap roots and a shoot system?
Yeah, so definitely trees and plants definitely have a root system and leaves, and depending on what type of tree or plant it is, it'll have like fruit or different flowers or things like that. Grass is a little different. Grass still has roots, but it's not the general roots we're seeing in the picture right now.
Oh, got it. Okay, interesting.
And then next thing is, so how do plants grow? And so a little hint is swans. I know you're thinking, how can swans help plants grow? Well, SWANs just stand for an acronym, which is sunlight, water, air, nutrients, and soil. So these are all the components that are needed to help a plant grow. So, you need sunlight to hit the plant to make sure that it's growing properly. You need water that can come from rain, or you like get in a water hose and go water the plants. It needs air. So just like humans need air, plants needs air as well. Then it needs nutrients. So nutrients is different for all plants. I like to give the example when you buy roses and they have the plant food, that is like a source of nutrients for the plant. And then also it needs soil. And the soil is basically used for it to grow. That's where the root systems are and stuff like that.
And so, Heaven, with the nutrients, that's found in the soil, or do the nutrients also come from the air as well? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So nutrients can come from the air because that is helping the plant grow, as I've shown another slide, and it's coming from the soil as well. Soil has a lot of nutrients in it just from it being on the earth. So that's where it gets majority of its nutrients from.
Okay. I love that. Swans. I'm going to remember that. That's great.
So next is, what is photosynthesis? So photosynthesis is basically when a green plant uses sunlight to convert chemical energy into food. And so what does that mean? So that's when the sun hits a plant, carbon dioxide, which is naturally within the air, and water all goes to a plant, and the plant kind of soaks up that energy and releases oxygen and glucose. And this is very helpful, at least the oxygen part is helpful for humans because we breathe oxygen. So plants are a major resource of how we get the oxygen. And then glucose is used to produce more plants at the end of the day. So it can help with like producing seeds, and it can develop fruits, and it can just help the plant grow overall. So that's the photosynthesis system broken down very easily.
That is really, this is such a great way to explain it. So, like, it intakes all these things, and then this is what it produces. And glucose is another word for like sugars, right? Like, I think about sugars when I hear glucose.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's not like the sugar you see and you go buy from the store, but it's kind of a sugar that, again, can be used in different components of a plant
Okay. So the plant then like uses that glucose to then like
to
make
keep.
other, yeah, to keep going.
Yeah. And so next we have two type of plants. So these are like the big categories of plants, which is flowering and non-flowering. So flowering basically means that it does have seeds, and then the non-flowering means that it has spores instead of seeds.
Oh.
And so on this next slide, it just goes in a little deeper. So this is the plant kingdom. So the kingdom is like the biggest category to identify plants. It can get really specific to like genus and species, but we can stay here for hours if we start going into that.
We start with kingdom. Yeah.
Right. So the big part is spore bearing. So again, spore bearing is non-flowering plants. So one of those is moss. You usually see moss grow on rocks or different hills and areas like that. You probably touch moss because it's one of those, it feels kind of grainy when you touch it.
Yeah.
It's very like flat. And then we have ferns. A lot of times ferns are mistaken for like a regular leaf, but it is found in like flowering areas. And
Mm-hmm.
then we also have algae. So there's a big debate, is algae a plant or not? So technically, algae is not a plant, but it has a lot of plant characteristics. So that's why we just include it inside the plant kingdom. And algae is where you can find plants like underwater. So if anybody ever had a fish tank and seen like that green leaf inside
Yeah.
the fish tank, that was most likely algae.
So then is that's so interesting that algae is kind of a plant, but also sort of not. So is it also, would it fit under bacteria or animal king? Like where does it cross over, I guess?
Yeah, so it's kind of its own category within like the water specimens. So
Oh,
again, they like to just call it plants in general because it looks like a plant. It has a lot of characteristics as a
yeah.
plant. It's spore bearing, but due to it being like underwater, is not considered a plant, but it's not bacteria or animal. It's very,
That is so interesting. I love how like we're just continuing to learn about the world around us and trying to like make sense of it and how that changes sometimes. That's really cool.
yeah. And then we also have seed bearing, which is flowering plants. So these are plants you usually see outside in your backyard and when you're going for walks. So we have conifers, which is basically like pine cones. That's really the main example I give is just pine cones.
Yeah.
And then we have flowering plants, which is like the daisies, the roses, dandelions, and plants like that.
We have a question coming through that's, I think it's probably about a flowering plant. So you mentioned that earlier that tomatoes are fruits. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what is the difference between a fruit versus a vegetable? Is it have something to do with the way that the seeds work?
Yes. So basically, fruits have seeds in it, and vegetables don't. So that's why we see strawberries, which have seeds on the outside, tomatoes, cucumbers. A lot of people think cucumbers is a vegetable, but it's actually a fruit because when you cut the cucumber, you see the seeds in the inside.
Yeah. So like a carrot would then be a vegetable.
Of Mhm.
Got it. Okay. That is super helpful. It's one of those things where people talk about it, but it's nice to know that it's about the seeds and where the seeds are. Cool.
Then next thing is why plants are cool. So I absolutely love plants, but I want you guys to love plants just as much as me. So the first thing we have, if you see this airplane just circling, this paper airplane, it actually derives from a plant. So as most people know, paper comes from trees, and trees such as like an evergreen conifer, which is a flowering plant, makes paper. So if
Hmm.
you like doing paper airplanes, think a plant for it. Then we also have bees. So bees are really useful in plants because bees carry pollen. So they basically transfer pollen from one plant to another plant. And it helps with like fertilization and creating more flowers. So if you like bees, bees definitely help plants grow. And
Yeah.
then we also have this funny guy over here in a sweater. If you guys like Christmas sweaters just as much as I do, again, thank a plant for that. Most sweaters are made out of cotton, and so cotton is from a plant. And so cotton is from the plant Gossypium. Gossypium is the genus of that plant. But I'm pretty sure if you guys go into Southern Illinois or very not urban environments, you'll see cotton plants a lot of places. And so that cotton is used to make your sweaters and your bed sheets and your t-shirts and
Wow. Yeah.
your clothing. And then right here we have Jenga. Jenga is one of my favorite games to play.
Mhm.
Absolutely love Jenga. And Jenga is made out of wood, and wood comes from plants. So the tree bark, the tree trunk is all can be broken down into wood, and that wood can be used to make your Jenga blocks. And then right here, we have a rubber plant. So this rubber plant can be used in the home. So let's say, it's really hot outside and it's really hot in your house and it's feeling really muggy. If you have this rubber plant, it can actually cool down the temperature. And,
Wow.
and so basically it just puts moisture in the air. From like raindrops. So you won't see the raindrops, but it's bringing moisture back in the air. So it kind of cools down your living space. And then the last thing we have here is Bob Ross doing a painting. I know my little sister loves doing paintings.
Yeah.
And I tell her that derives from plants. So you can get pigments and different oils from plants such as like strawberries, pomegranates, blueberries, basil leaves, things of that nature. So plants can be used as paint if you want to.
This is so cool. And I love your saying, thank a plant for that. Like, I think I'm just looking about in the room I'm in and I'm thinking about all the things that, like the shirt that I'm wearing, I'm sitting at a wooden desk, right? There's paint on the wall. So I think that's really cool to connect kind of where these things came from. And plants are so cool. They do so much.
Right.
I love that.
And then lastly, we have some fun plant facts. So right here, we have poison ivy. And I'm pretty sure sometime in your life, you had someone tell you, don't touch poison ivy because it's poisonous.
Yeah.
Well, technically, poison ivy isn't poisonous. It's the sticky layer, type of like an oil on the poison ivy that makes it poisonous. So if you touch that layer of oil, that's what breaks your skin out. So don't blame the plant, blame the oil on top of it if you ever get poison ivy.
And is that like, is it a defense mechanism of some kind that for the plant to have that oil on it? Do you know why it's like that?
I think so. I think it has to do with the environment that it's in.
Mm,
So I'm pretty sure that it's competing with other plants around it. And, humans love to go and pick plants, but sometimes that can be detrimental to the plant's life because you're
right.
detaching it from its root. And as we've seen before, the roots need to be there for it to keep growing. So I definitely think it's probably due to like a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then next we have a Venus flytrap. So I know a lot of people already know Venus flytraps are carnivores, so they're able to eat different animals. I think the animal in here is either a wasp or a
Oh,
bee. Um, and there's this another cool plant called a nepenthe, and so it's like a pitcher plant. That plant is very similar to a Venus flytrap, and that one can actually like engulf a whole rat. So
right.
uh, if you thought plants can't eat animals, it definitely
That's
can.
insane. A little known fact, a couple years ago, the Field Museum softball team, we were called the pitcher plants. And we had a really cool t-shirt that had a plant eating a softball.
Right. That is so cool. I wish I could get one of those t-shirts.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
And then next we have diamonds. So, everybody loves diamonds. Diamonds is a girl's best friend. Little do people know that that derives from plants too, in a very creative way. So, basically, plants that have been degraded and have been kind of pushed down into Earth's surface, where there's like a lot of dirt and water gets in, basically with enough heat that can make coal. And so that coal then can be turned into diamonds. So very interesting process, but it can happen. So diamonds can derive from plants.
That is really cool. It just speaks to how interconnected the whole world is. I love that.
Right. And then if anybody knows what this flag is,
Is that the Brazilian flag?
yeah, so this is the Brazilian fact, and like a really fun fact is that Brazil was actually named after a plant. So the name of the plant was Pau Brazil, which is translated in English as the Brazil tree. So that is where Brazil got its name
No
from.
way. I never put that together.
And so this one here, these are dandelions. So I know before we talked about tomatoes and different fruits that you can eat from plants, but you can actually eat a dandelion as well. Dandelions are edible. I always say be careful not to just pick a random dandelion and eat it because it can have different like fertilizer, different
Mhm.
sprays that can make you sick. But if you're ever in a safe environment where you know that dandelion has not been affected, I definitely say try one. It doesn't taste like a fruit, but it's always something you should try.
What does it taste like? Can you describe it?
To me, when I tried it for the first time, it just tasted like rubbery. I don't know if that's because of the one I tasted, but I was like, I tasted a flower. So,
Yeah. And I imagine you'd want to eat a dandelion in this like yellow form, right?
yeah,
Like not when it turns into the puffball.
right. So I think some people eat it then, but I think that would be a little harmful because it's still in the premature phase. So I definitely suggest the yellow, bright dandelions are the best ones to eat.
Yellow, but only if I think what you said is really important. Only if it's safe, there's no fertilizers or sprays on it. Yeah. So don't go out there just picking
Right.
random plants to eat. Yes.
Exactly. And then the last one is lavenders. So this one is just because it's my favorite plant. My favorite color is purple, and I really like the lavender scent. So really love this plant.
That is so great. I was going to ask you what was your favorite plant. So it's lavender. And
Yeah.
it does smell so lovely. I like it when you can like brush your fingers.
Yeah. And then that was the end of the presentation.
This is so fun. Heaven, thank you so much. For all of you who are viewing, feel free to chat questions and I'll happily pass them along to Heaven. And as we're waiting for that, one question that comes to mind is, how did you fall in love with plants? Was there like an experience you had, or is it just something that you've always gravitated towards?
Yeah, so I think I fell in love with plants because of the field museum. So I did my first internship again with the botany department, but we were focused more on like gaming, and so we got to go into the botany realm of the museum, and we got to see the different plants there and kind of understand the meaning of them and how it's like so beneficial in life. And so for me, somebody who's trying to go into like the medical field one day to learn all these cool things that plants can do to help that part of the field, I was like, oh my gosh, I love plants. So that really got me interested in seeing what else can plants do.
That is so great. I love the idea of just having an experience at a place like the Field Museum and just being introduced to a whole world that's out there and how that's really set you on this path. That is really cool. We've got a couple questions coming in. So one is, do you bring your work home with you? Do you have a lot of plants where you live?
Yeah, so I used to live in the inner city of Chicago, so in an apartment. So
Mhm.
keeping up a plant in an apartment is not the easiest, especially with like the sunlight not being as strong and not having it flow in the air. But I do have plants over in my grandmother's house. She has a backyard full of plants, so I oftentimes just go back there and help her plant.
That is cool. And right, we were just chatting as we got on that like that sounds like that's going to be something you help out with this summer is
Yeah.
helping your grandma plan for her garden. That's really cool. Um, Another question is, and you sort of mentioned that you're interested in pursuing the medical field, perhaps, but do you know sort of what you'd like to research in the future, or how you see plants fitting into your future career plans?
Yeah, so I definitely think I'm the type of person I do like the chemical field and figuring out what chemicals can be used, but also just started getting interested in more like a holistic approach of like different herbs and different teas and different plants that you can use within your diet that can help you and your immune system. I mean, I think it's really important, especially like with COVID and everything around, to utilize as much natural products as possible to help your immune system. So I'm not sure just how I'm gonna use it yet, but I definitely want to use it in that type of way.
That's really cool. And I think, yeah, looking at the natural world around us and continuing to learn is really exciting. I feel like there's lots of different pathways.
Mhm.
I think that's so great. There's also a question about, we've got a lot of young scientists and social scientists who are viewing today. What advice do you have for kids who maybe want to pursue a career in science? What advice would you pass along?
I would tell them explore, explore, explore. Science does not have all the answers. So the more curious you are, the more questions you ask, it's just going to benefit science at the end of the day. So just keep being curious and keep asking questions, and you're going to make a big impact in science.
That's so cool. Yep. I think that's it. Be curious, be a lifelong learner, right? So then for students who are interested in botany, thinking about some of the experiences you've had, do you recommend any resources or activities to help get students further involved in botany? Any books or places to go or things to do outside that will help spark that curiosity?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of apps on the App Store where if you take a picture of a plant, it tells you like the species, the genus, like where does it derive from. So I know when I first started getting interested in plants, I definitely used a couple of different apps and just walked around my neighborhood just to see like, oh, I know this is a purple plant, but what type of purple plant is it? Like, does this grow only in my area? Does it grow in another area? So if you're curious about plants, I definitely suggest going on the App Store. I know they have a lot of free versions on there. You just have to choose the right one.
That's a great idea. So then you kind of have a tool in your back pocket as you're walking around.
Mm.
And I imagine, I mean, even in a city like Chicago, I feel like there are plants everywhere, right? It's just a matter of kind of using your observation skills.
Right.
Yeah. Um, I was sort of thinking about what you were saying, and one of the things that we do a lot with our teachers, and our teachers do with their students, is scientific drawing. And I'm wondering if you do scientific drawing when you're observing plants, either out in nature or in a laboratory.
Yeah, so I am not a drawer myself. I'm not the best at doing it, but I know that when I was at the Field Museum, I worked with another intern, and she was really good
Mm.
at drawing. So oftentimes we'll take a picture of the plant and be like, "Hey, look at this," and she'll just like start drawing in her notebook. But that was like just one of her hobbies because she really liked drawing.
Yeah, it's we I find when I draw, I pay attention to different details than when I look at something. It helps me like dig in a little bit more, and plants are so detailed. There's so much to look at.
Yeah, I definitely wish I had that drawing hand.
There you go. Yeah, maybe get up and pick it back up, right? Just grab a notebook and yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Well, we are just about at time. But one sort of final question for you. Um, is there a plant that, you just find just like so curious and that like makes you want to research or ask different questions about? Is there anything that's like making your brain a little itchy when you think about the plant world?
Yeah, definitely the non-flowering plants is something to explore because you get so mesmerized by the flowering plants. You're like, it's so pretty with all the different colors, and you see it all the time. But if you look at the non-flowering plants, they have some really interesting facts, especially if you look at its contribution to like other countries and how important it is to like their ecosystem. So definitely research non-flowering plants. Specifically, the ferns is one of my favorites. So.
Especially, which one? Can you say that again?
Ferns.
Oh, the ferns, yeah. And ferns have been around, like they're like an ancient plant, right? Like they've been around for forever almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like the idea of thinking about plants throughout time and sort of where that evolution has happened and how, like you said, how that's changed our ecosystems. Oh, cool. Well, Heaven, this has been so great. I feel like I'm gonna go outside and like thank a plant now for all that they do for us. And thank you so much for your time and your energy and for answering all of the questions that came at you. We really appreciate it.
No, no problem. Thank you for coming here to learn more about plants.
Absolutely. I imagine many of our young learners are now going you've turned them on to botany. So thanks for that. Maybe they'll get some future interns at the Field Museum. Awesome. Well, everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us today. Heaven, again, thank you so much. And we look forward to connecting with you all again in the future. Have a great afternoon, everyone.